Zeon Chris steps in for the Ragin Cajuns. It's Locked On Sunbelt.
You are Locked On Sunbelt, your daily podcast on the Sunbelt Conference, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, welcome to another edition of Locked On Sunbelt, your team every day. Hope you enjoyed the weekend. And again, thanks so much. We had a nice little response to the quick Sunday recap. And we'll recap for a couple of days because we can, because we do 14 teams. And we'll go through it. Again, we continue to grow. Thank you so much. Record downloads last week. Audio portion, get it in Apple Podcast and Spotify. That seems to be the most popular. And please subscribe in YouTube. We are about halfway to 100 for the month, so it would be nice to at least get there. I was hoping for 800, but if we can get to 700, that would be fantastic as well. And we're looking forward to continuing to grow. Thank you so much for subscribing. Today's episode of Locked On Sunbelt is brought to you by FanDuel, the official sports book of Locked On. Make every moment more right now. New customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. All right. Raging Cajuns, don't know what we have with them, right? Like a lot of teams 2 weeks in, you play a lesser opponent and you beat them handily, although you don't play very well. And then you go on the road and you beat an opponent you're not very familiar with. And you fall way behind. And then you make a run, almost 2 90-yard drives, and it falls short at the 7-yard line. Defense was just awful. Playing that ball game against ODU, although they did make a stop at the end to give the offense a chance, and we all know it ended at the 7-yard. So now you're going on the road to UAB. You're playing a prolific quarterback and offense, and your quarterback, Ben Woldridge, is playing well, and he goes down on the 4th play of the game. Sounds familiar? I know, too soon. His foot, not his knee. We'll see how he is, but he had to be carted off. The field x-rays were negative. We'll get an update later today from head coach Mike Desermo. So in comes Zeon Chris, and highly touted freshman. We talked about him. Highly touted redshirt freshman. We talked about him, a bunch in the offseason. He got all of the snaps in the spring. Chandler Fields had an appendectomy. And Woldridge was coming back from a knee injury, knee surgery. So he got all of the possibilities for the Cajuns in the spring. And we're wondering, because we didn't think Ben was going to be healthy, that, who do we go with? Do you go with Zeon Chris, who may take a little bit of time to get going, but it'll pay off for the next 2 or 3 years? Or do you go with the experience in Chandler Fields? And again, it's one sample size, rather small. But boy, once Zeon Chris settled in and settled down, he was a lot of fun to watch. He looked like he was aiming. When he came in, he missed Peter LeBlanc on a crossing pattern that could have been picked off, I guess. When you throw it a couple of yards behind him, that's a dangerous throw. And he just seemed to be aiming the football. Then we had a 90-minute weather delay, and he comes back, and he's Superman. He's Michael Vick out there. 14 to 20, 170 yards or so, and a touchdown. 80-yard touchdown run. Scored twice on the ground. And the Cajuns going into the delay, it was 0-0. And then they come out of the delay and they scored 24 second quarter points. Is that right? Let me get this straight. And yeah, nothing in the first. 24 second quarter points. Jacob Cabote, 30-yard touchdown run right up the gut, 7-0. Zeon Chris, after an interception in the end zone by Tyler Guidry, 80-yard touchdown run. So UAB is going to tie this ball game up, and Jacob Zeno throws an interception. Next play, 80-yard run. So instead of a 7-7 game, it's a 14-0 ball game. Zeon Chris, 6-yard touchdown run. And for good measure, now it's 21-0. And for good measure, Kenneth Almendarez hits a 46-yard field goal as time was winding down, as the Cajuns, got some breaks at the end of the half. They go into half 24-0. Game's basically over, right? Although we've seen some other Sunbelt teams let leads get away, they tack on a field goal and then a Terrence Carter touchdown, and it's 34-3, and the Cajuns are off to the races. All right. It did get sloppy at the end, although if you did take the over, you were very happy. On the other hand, if you did take the under, when the Cajuns, Bill Davis got a touchdown run to make it 41-3. You're like, all right, it's 7 minutes to go. The over-under is like 58, 59. Here it is actually 60. And it's 44 with 7 minutes to go. This may be on bad beats on SVP. We'll see on this week. I said to take the over. You didn't get it by that much, but you don't have to get it by that much. You just have to get it. I did not take it, so I won't pat myself on the back in that, although I was right. But it did not go well for the Cajuns. Allowing the touchdown drive by Zeno is okay, but you had, a bad coverage on onside kick. You had Chandler Fields throwing an interception. I have no idea why he's throwing it. The rage would have been done 20 minutes earlier if this game just ended very quickly. But UAB puts up a couple of late scores to make it a 41-21 ball game, and honestly, it was not nearly that close. So the Cajuns also played really well defensively in this ball game, where they had some issues trying to slow down Grant Wilson the game before. They had 7 sacks and 2 interceptions. That is what we came to see. Mason Narcisse did play some, did have 3 tackles. Again, Tyler Guidry with an interception and a sack. The Cajuns defense was outstanding. You're up 41-3. You're playing really, really well. And so we'll see where we go from here. All right. They're bringing in Buffalo. Buffalo's coming in this week. They gave up over 50 points to Liberty. And then they're going to Minnesota. That's not exactly, you know what that is? That's a lot like South Alabama going to Oklahoma State. It's not Michigan. It's not Ohio State. It's not Texas. It's not USC. It's not Oregon. It's Minnesota. They're a middling Big Ten team. Play well in that. Don't turn the ball over, and you're going to have a shot to win that football game. You may even be faster. I don't know about bigger, but you may be faster. So we'll see. We've got some Power 5 wins, right? JMU over, JMU's already beaten Virginia. South Alabama has beaten Oklahoma State. Why can't the Cajuns beat Minnesota? Now they'll be more prepared to play a Zeon Chris, right? UAB just wasn't prepared for the switching quarterback. And by the way, again, no update on Ben Woldridge. Again, we'll get that later today on Monday, but I would presume he's going to be out for a couple of weeks. The thing is, and we'll get it at the end of this episode, are you going to be able to, it's not about, well, I guess it will be. It'll be about keeping up or slowing down Texas State, because they scored touchdowns on their first 8 possessions of the game yesterday. Jeez. Against Jackson State. Jackson State kept up with them for a little bit, but in the end, they could not. Texas State, 77 points. So that'll be interesting. That game is coming up post Minnesota. All right, when we come back, Georgia State, 3-0 for the first time since ever. Panthers, 3-0. Darren Granger is having a spectacular season for the Panthers. We will discuss after this. And we are brought to you today by Betterhelp, something that I've actually used recently for some assistance. Do you ever find that as you're trying to fall asleep, your brain suddenly won't stop talking? Do your thoughts start racing right before bed or at any other inopportune moments? It turns out one great way to make those racing thoughts go away is talk them through. Therapy gives you a place to do that so you can get out of your negative thought cycles and find some mental and emotional peace. All right. I've actually tried BetterHelp. It is very convenient. They'll do it around your schedule. We all, most of us working, regular jobs. So they will do it either early in the morning if you have time. I guess you could do it at lunch if you have time on your schedule. But my time was in the evening, and it was a little bit late on the East Coast. I don't mind saying, certainly past normal work hours, but my therapist didn't have any problem with that. And it was an enjoyable conversation. He could hear my frustration with what I'm going through, and we'll try to talk with him again as we move forward. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. Get a break from your thoughts with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnCollege today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnCollege. All right, a little warm here today. I don't know what's going on. Dave Schultz, Locked On Sunbelt, your team every day. Let's talk about these Georgia State Panthers. They are 3-0. They did not get off to the best start this season when they didn't play particularly well, at least defensively, against Rhode Island, right? And Darren Granger and company played extremely well in that football game. The offense was not a problem for Georgia State against Rhode Island, right? Darren Granger, 16-20 in that ball game, 193 yards, a couple of touchdowns. Carroll, 23 carries, 184 yards, 3 touchdowns. So the offense was not the problem. The defense was the problem. They gave up 520 yards to Rhode Island. Now they had a win and move on, and some of us may have, used FanDuel to get on the Panthers, but Georgia State had a win and move on. It was not a pretty victory, but win and move on, game 1. It has gotten better since. Against UConn, again, somebody who I think is better than they were, but maybe not. Maybe they're reverting back. They have not played well this year. In fact, Darren Granger had a little bit of an off day. 15 out of 26, 144 yards, and 1 touchdown on the ground. And he did have a good game on the ground that time. 12 carries, 142 yards, and a touchdown. But defensively, they were much better, giving up only 326 yards to UConn and only 50 on the ground. That's a significant improvement from Rhode Island. So good job by Georgia State. And then they go on the road. Some people had them as an upset. They were actually favored by about 6 against Charlotte. And, they jumped out to a 20-10 halftime lead. I'm not sure they were actually ever threatened. It was actually 17-0. Charlotte came back, scored the next 10 points, but went into half 20-10. They jumped out to a 34-10 lead in the third quarter, so maybe some reserves are getting in there. Although Darren Granger did throw a fourth quarter touchdown pass, 41-25. Again, Darren Granger, how about these numbers? 27 of 33, 466 yards, and 3 touchdowns. He is having the kind of season we were hoping he was going to have. His completion percentage, my goodness, it was about 60% his first 2 years in the Sun Belt. He's up to 73%. We're looking for like 65. He's up to 73%, 6 touchdowns, no interceptions. He is having an outstanding season. He has more than 200 yards on the ground and a couple of touchdowns. Again, as we've seen, if he can just have a normal football game, an average football game, even an above average football game, and the defense plays well, this Georgia State team is going to be tough. Now, they're going to get a test coming up as they have Coastal Carolina. So it'll be interesting to see if they have, which I think they've improved each and every week. My God, that's a thing in college football, just because what happens one week doesn't mean you can't build on it, right? And they say the cliche of, you get the most improvement from week 1 to week 2. That seems to be about it, and it continues to get better for them. They're playing really well, but they're getting Coastal this week, so we'll see. It's on the road. I think Coastal is a small favorite at home. Probably wouldn't bet that one because that one I would have no idea. I'd say the over, but who knows on that one. What happens if Georgia State's defense does come to play in that one? Let's see if we got a quick line on this ball game. Coastal Carolina. I know the early lines are out. Coastal Carolina is 6.5. That seems like a lot of points. Coastal put up a bunch of points against Duquesne, but they haven't really played that well offensively. They 30-16 over Jacksonville State, and UCLA was the first game under Tim Beck. So we'll take that for what it was. I think this is going to be a great football game. We'll absolutely talk about it later in the week. Georgia State, congratulations to Coach Elliott. Again, I got to think about that. Sean Clark at App State and Sean Elliott at Georgia State. Sorry about that. Congratulations to them. Said he was making wholesale changes. And sometimes you think it's just coach talk, coach speak. And when you know it, so far, it looks like the changes are for the better, right? They're getting better. Darren Granger's having a great season. Let me see quickly. I know we're running a little bit late. I want to see where Aaron ranks in stats for football right now. Let's see. Are these updated through the week yet? Because he's got to be up there for quarterbacks, right? Like Texas State. Let's see here. We got team. Let's see individual. No, not at individuals yet. They're not passing it as much as some other teams. So that may be a thing as well. And I this is all a PDF, so I can't change the rankings just yet. And still, here we go. How about total offense? Darren Granger, number 1, 339 yards a game. So that takes rushing and passing a collective. That's outstanding. He's second in the conference in passing per game, 267 yards. Outstanding. Passing efficiency, numero uno. That's fantastic. So good for Darren Granger taking that next step as we had hoped, and that'll make Georgia State very tough moving forward, although they will have their biggest test coming up here this week against Coastal Carolina. All right, let's take a timeout. When we come back, Texas State, we sort of alluded to it. They are lighting up the scoreboard. They didn't have any problems bouncing back from a tough loss to UTSA. Time to tell you about Athletic Brewing Company. Now, time for your game changer of the week, brought to you by Athletic Brewing Company. Much like Zeon Chris, and we actually had plenty to choose from as well. But we're going to go with Zeon Chris. Athletic Brewing Company has completely changed the non-alcoholic beer game. They make non-alcoholic beers that actually taste good. Zeon Chris coming in for the injured Ben Wooldridge. Throws for 174 yards, 1 touchdown in the air, rushes for over 100 yards, 2 touchdowns on the ground, including an 80-yard score as he leads the Louisiana Ragin Cajuns to a 41-21 win over UAB. And as we indicated, that score was not nearly as close as the game actually was. All right. It was much more of a blowout. Congratulations to Zeon Chris. It would appear he's the starting quarterback moving forward, at least over the next couple of weeks. Athletic Brewing Company, their brews are great tasting and award-winning and beat out full-strength beers in global competitions. They brew over 50 styles of craft non-alcoholic beer, including IPAs, Goldens, Sours, and more. You can find Athletic Brewing Company's non-alcoholic brews at a store near you or buy online at athleticbrewing.com. First-time customers can use code LOCKEDON to get 15% off your first online order. That's code LOCKEDON, locked on, at checkout for 15% off at athleticbrewingcompany.com. Near beer, exclusions and conditions apply. Athletic Brewing Company, fit for all times. All right, Dave Schultz, Locked On Sunbelt, your team every day. Texas State, could very well be 3-0. Tough loss a couple weeks ago against UTSA. They had beaten Baylor in week 1, and wasn't sure about Jackson State. They had a couple of wins, but a bad loss. And obviously, a lot of the guys that were on Jackson State last year are now in Colorado with Coach Prime. And Texas State was Impossible to stop. Jackson State could not do it. They scored touchdowns on their first, I believe, all 8 possessions in the first half. Let me get to the second half. And they're rolling. They're going to be tough. All right. Do not count out Texas State in the West. That is going to, there's a game at the end of the year that may determine the West. That's South Alabama going to San Marcos. All right. Let me get the play-by-play here. I'm sorry. Play-by-play. It was 77-34. So Texas State is absolutely is lighting up the scoreboard. But 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. All 8 possessions in the first half, touchdowns. 9. So they scored touchdowns on 9. 1 in the second half. Then they had an interception. Then 10, 11, end of the game. So they had 13 possessions. They scored 11 touchdowns. That's how you get 77. No field goals, by the way. Let me see what the team stats were, because I think Jackson State they each had 1 turnover, 684 yards of offense. And it was spread around. TJ Finley, you'd think he'd have these huge numbers. Solid. 17 to 21, 251 yards, 3 touchdowns. Malik Hornsby came in, got a little bit of time. He's the one who threw the interception. Malik Hornsby, though, did rush it 10 times for 133 yards and a couple of touchdowns. Demarius Good also had 11 carries, 105 yards. You don't have any earth-shattering numbers on the receiving end either, although you do have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 guys who caught footballs. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yeah. So it's spread out. Drew Donnelly, 3 catches, 83 yards and a touchdown. Cole Wilson, 4 catches, 50 yards and a touchdown. Ashton Hawkins had the other touchdown. So these are not mind-blowing. Someone's got a Darren Granger, 466-yard day, or, caught 200 yards of offense or something, or caught 200 yards of football, something along those lines. Just a really solid win. Does the defense lack something? I'm going to presume at 56 to 20, they played a lot of guys in the second half. They gave up 400 yards of offense. I'm going to take that with a grain of salt as well. Although, Jackson State matched them for a little bit. They matched them for a little bit. It was 7-0. It was 14-0. And then Jackson State got a touchdown. In fact, they scored in the game. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 straight touchdowns between the two teams. From Jackson State punting the ball down 7-0 to Texas State scoring a touchdown to make it 14-0 to down 35-20, and Jackson State threw an interception. So they stayed with them. It was 28-20, and Texas State made it 35-20, and on the next play was an interception by Jackson State. So tough to say they didn't play any defense, because they did. They did give up a lot of points, but again, I presume a lot of reserves played in the second half. And when you're scoring 77 points, no one really cares. So it's going to be interesting. Now they get Nevada this week. So I've said that story before. Is Nevada's last win, by the way? We could check this out. Nevada's last win may be against Texas State. Let's see if Nevada has won this year. Nevada's nope, they're 0-3. So is that 13? Is that a 13-game losing streak? Because their last win is against Texas State, September 3rd of 22. They haven't won a game since. Oddly enough, this is not a coincidence. This is irony. Their losing streak started the following week against Incarnate Word, G.J. Kinney, who's now the coach of Texas State. So they have not won a ball game since September 3rd, 2022. And it was 38-14 in Nevada against Texas State. They have lost 10 games since, or 13 games since. I have a feeling this is not going to break the losing streak. But then, let me see what Texas State has after that. I think Southern Miss. All right. So, yeah, I'm almost a gauntlet. Are any of these easy? You get Monroe. We'll see how good they are. They're at Southern Miss. That offense not nearly as good as we'd hoped. We'll see what Louisiana is in a few weeks. They get Monroe. Then they're home against Troy and home against Georgia Southern. Then at Coastal, at Arkansas State. And again, we're thinking maybe that South Alabama game is going to mean something for South Alabama. It could mean a whole lot for Texas State and G.J. Kinney. All right. I want to thank you so much for tuning in. We'll recap more of the action in the Sun Belt later on in the week. I'm not ignoring it. App State with a nice win over ECU. Arkansas State with not only a win, but some touchdowns. Nice to see for the Red Wolves. Actually played pretty well defensively. Let's see. We'll go over these ball games. Southern Miss, they got some issues. Coastal, how much can you say about a 66-7 win over Duquesne? And that's about all. And we covered the other games. And there's not much to say about Monroe against A&M. Not completely embarrassed, but A&M covered, I guess, if you want to look at it that way. All right, so lots to do this week. Thank you so much for tuning in. Please continue to subscribe on the YouTube channel. And again, do so audio-wise. If you don't have time and you don't like to see a good hair day, you just want to listen to it, you can download and subscribe on Apple Podcast and Spotify. Please rate and review on Apple Podcast. It is a big help. All right. Once again, I'm your host, Dave Schultz. Thanks for listening and watching to Locked On Sunbelt, your team every day.